Hey, just before we get started, this is a conspiracy, paranormal, and true crime podcast.
The nature of this podcast is gory, unsettling, and definitely vulgar.
And we curse a lot.
Like, a lot.
So be advised.
That we're just two idiots with a mic.
Yo, and welcome back to Creeps and Crimes
Podcast.
I'm Taylar.
And I'm Morgan. And this is episode 89.
89, guys. Welcome back.
Welcome back. It's still Pride Month. It's still June.
It's still Pride
Happy
Month.
Pride. We are standing with you guys. We support you. We love you.
We love Pride Month.
I love Pride Month.
We keep talking about it a lot, but I just love June. I just love...
June is just like a sunshiny day.
Yeah, she's like elite. She's like, you're out of school. Well, not for Northerners, right?
I didn't get out of school till like mid-June, like June 12th.
That is insane. Because end of May down here is when we get out of school. And it was always like, June's coming. It's my birth month. It's Pride Month.
Let's rally.
Let's ride. It's freaking summer now.
Full speed ahead.
Birthdays,
Let's
you're off
get
from cheer.
crunk.
Yeah, you're off from cheer. You're off from dance. You've got a little break because literally, legally, they can't have you for a little bit. But then also you do have like cheer camp sprinkled in.
And it's still that time where like, oh, your parents are still working. They don't have their 2 weeks vacation yet. And you're like just chilling, running that house until 3 p.m. when they get home, or 5 p.m., whatever time it is. Fending for yourselves, eating ramen, making
having your
grilled
friends
cheese,
who are 16 come pick you up.
SpaghettiOs.
Yeah. That's how it goes.
If you were
Bologna
me,
and cheese sandwiches if you're me.
If you were me in high school, you were sneaking out every single night.
Oh, God.
Mom, don't listen to that.
That was not me. Beth Ann's fine. She probably, no, at this point.
She knows. I told her. She wasn't thrilled. But it was so funny. Let me tell you the story of what we used to do.
Oh, God.
So I used to have like 6 or 7 girls come over at once, right? And we would build these like bodies.
Oh, dear God.
With blankets and pillows and like make it look, I'm like, okay, there's 6 of us. There's 1 body, 2 body, 3 body, 4 body, 5 body, 6 body. And we'd put blankets over, and then we'd like leave like baby dolls or like something
extensions.
with hair extensions.
Yeah,
exactly. Like our cheer like hair pieces.
Yes.
We'd leave them there, and then we'd be like, they'll never know.
They never will get
We'd
it.
sneak out, all 6 of us, out my back deck, got picked up, and we went to a party. And we'd be back by 5:30 before my dad went to work.
Y'all are crazy.
Yeah.
Y'all were crazy.
We loved the summer.
Yeah. Y'all are crazy.
And we loved June.
I had a friend who had a family like shared river house.
Oh, shit.
And I had another friend who had a boat that he was like licensed to drive that boat, and his parents would chill with us on that boat. We would go out on this boat in the middle of the river, in the middle of summer, to this lake house, nobody around, and just throw ragers, like all day river ragers.
If we lived by, well, we do live by rivers, but if we lived like...
Yeah. Like
close
the river
enough,
house is near my house?
Yeah. If we lived close enough, no, game over. I would not be here today. I'd be at the bottom of the lake.
I know. I mean, that's so terrifying to think of.
It is scary.
I don't like when my sisters are over hanging out with their friends, and I'm like, I know I did it, but I know exactly what I was doing, and it was not safe.
But like even now, like cops are like way more like in tune of what's going on.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, like we say that we thought they were like real strict back then with us, but like imagine our parents had no police enforcement.
Oh my God. Our parents were like murdering people,
my parents
throwing them
would
in the river.
drive to West Virginia because the drinking age was 18 and would just get hammered.
And my parents are like waving
and
at
would
the
Uber
cop.
back. Wink.
Yeah, literally. That's so crazy to think about how like enforcement of things has changed. But also it's not even more so of that. It's just that we're all like constantly putting our life out there.
Yeah.
So you know when someone's doing something crazy. You know who to watch out for.
You got Snapchat. You got the private stories.
And we're dumb. We're like, oh, law enforcement can't see this.
Yeah.
Bitch, they're
like, oh, this one person that we didn't invite to the party is definitely not going to call the cops. Let's take a picture.
Party. Smile. Selfie. Like literally so ridiculous the shit we would do.
Oh my God. I love summertime.
Summer's the best.
But our summer, we just need to get through June. We love June. Yes. We love June.
So far, June
it's
June 1st currently, guys. They're like, oh my God, when are they recording? It's June 1st.
It is June 1st.
It is June 1st. And it's popping off. It is popping off.
We got a lot of new listeners.
A lot of new listeners. A lot of cool things we're doing.
What
and
more
Taylar
could you ask for?
misspelled island today on a Patreon post that's on our Instagram. So
Forever.
And I didn't fix it. So you guys just ride with it.
Islan.
Cannibal Islan.
Cannibal Islan. No D.
No D.
Islan.
Iceland. I bet they were looking at that. Well, I bet, you know how your brain just like tricks you?
Yeah.
I bet it was something like that
It
for a
did
lot of
trick
people.
me.
But you think very critically. I don't.
I said, actually, it wasn't immediately. I think I saw it and then I didn't realize, and then until I went and looked again. And then I was like, by the way, Island is spelled incorrectly.
Not right. And at first I was like, did I put aisle? Like, how did I spell that? And then I was like, oh, I just totally forgot a D. And then I'm pissed at Canva because why didn't she let me know?
Yeah, Canva
Girl.
pick up the slack.
We literally dedicate our lives to
Get
you.
it together.
What are you doing to my public image,
Canva.
bitch?
Let's go.
I just know, Marty Bass, if you're listening, two episodes in a row, you've gotten a shout out from me. 2 episodes in a row. Who am I? Marty Bass, I bet he saw that and he knew. The second chick wrote it.
He knew the second chick made the Canva graphic.
He did. He had to know.
He knew. And I'm surprised he didn't say anything.
That's so ridiculous. Anyways, I think we're ready to get started with the episode. We've got a crazy episode today, but very sad.
We're both very sad.
They're sad. They're enraging.
They're enraging and they're injustices, and we're gonna do it. We're gonna
do it because that's what we're dedicating this month to. We're gonna kill people. Who's ready for it?
Just kidding.
Well, who's excited?
Who's ready? Alrighty, guys. If you're driving, throw that shit on cruise control.
If you got a glass, pour that shit up,
and let's get creepy.
All right, Morgan, what type of bullshittery do you have for me today?
Today, guys, I'm going to be throwing a little bit of shade towards Canada.
We hate to do this to you.
We hate to do this to you. And I'm going to just throw a huge disclaimer. We know the United States has and is still doing worse shit than what you guys have. But Canada, this one's for you.
Yeah.
Unlike the United States, Canada this is a true fact, currently considered one of the most welcoming and progressive countries who value their citizens, their sexuality, and they protect those rights. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately for Canada, this was not always the case.
Well, yeah, and I don't think it's ever been the case with Indigenous people in Canada either.
It has not.
I have to throw that out there too. Continue, sorry.
And I actually mentioned that.
Oh, great.
Mind reader, psychic.
Yeah.
During the Cold War, Canada was less worried about whether their allies down south, aka us, were about to be bombed, and a little more worried about their civil servants' sexuality.
Are you kidding?
In the 1940s, there was a major scandal in the British Parliament. 5 of its most powerful members, known today as the Cambridge Five, were spies in the United Kingdom that passed information to the Soviet Union during World War II.
Whoa.
This spy ring was active from the 1930s at least until the early 1950s. The Cambridge Five consisted of Donald Maclean, who was a British diplomat, Guy Burgess, also a British diplomat, Harold Kim Philby, who was a senior officer in Britain's Secret Intelligence Service, Anthony Blunt, who was the former surveyor of the King and Queen's pictures for the Royal Art Collection.
Holy shit.
How do you become
a spy?
Why would you be a spy for that? Just do your job. It's such a cool job.
Take pictures.
Just take pictures. Just pick the right ones.
Just be a good one.
And last was John Cairncross, who was a British literary scholar. All 5 Soviet spies went to school together at the University of Cambridge, hence the name Cambridge Five. But once caught in a honey trap by the KGB, the Cambridge Five were exposed. And it made headlines, but not the headlines that you'd think. They were a little more, very much so, offensive headlines like, quote, how to spot a possible homo.
What?
And list of, quote, alleged signs of male homosexuality. One of these signs was being a Soviet Union spy.
Like they were?
I'll get there. This launched a series and correlations of homosexuality leading to espionage and betrayal because two of the Cambridge Five, Guy Burgess and Anthony Blunt, were gay.
Okay.
And a third, Donald McLean, was bisexual.
Oh.
So 3 out of the 5 were LGBTQ members.
Okay.
This was an era of anything but straight is jail.
Ooh.
You know? And I just want to scream because, like, correlation is not causation.
Yeah.
Just because these people...
Just because they were gay or bi and spies does not mean
every gay or bisexual person is a spy.
Is a spy.
Regardless, this was a different time, a time where the LGBTQ plus community had to live in secret with fear of losing the lives that they have built. And this idea, this fear, carried across the Atlantic Ocean and into Canada. Everybody was on their toes. Who else was a spy? Any government employee was at risk of being fired. But homosexuals were at an even higher risk of losing their jobs and having their lives flipped upside down. Canadian officials were scared, terrified, actually, at the thought of homosexuals being employed by their government.
I'm sorry. I want to bust out laughing because that is the most bullshit thing I've ever heard in my life.
I know.
What?
This included LGBTQ plus members who served the civil service, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or the RCMP, and the military.
Wow.
So why were they so scared? But because thanks to the Cambridge Five, they had this fear that these LGBTQ plus citizens would be at a greater risk of blackmail by Russian spies, specifically gay men. And in order to keep their nation's secret a secret, all civil service homosexuals needed to be identified and removed from the service.
Oh my God.
They believed, this is so fucked up, they believed that these men and women suffered from like a character weakness.
Are you kidding
And
me?
that they would be easy to manipulate.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me right now?
No, like Canada, what were you doing?
Canada, what the fuck, dude? Really?
Like, I don't want to laugh, but like, this is fucked
No,
up.
that is ridiculous. I mean, it's almost comical how fucking stupid they sound.
So therefore, they wanted and they needed to wean them out. Like, they needed to get them out. Oh, this started a wildly homophobic and brutal journey for the Canadian government and its people.
I'm sure it did.
The Canadian government security panel immediately got to work. And they developed a couple of tests that would supposedly detect homosexuality in a test subject. They had compiled lists of people who they suspected to be homosexual, as well as had coworkers turning coworkers in. Which, this is not documented, but I'm sure each person was like bribed. Like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there was more to it than just like...
Or coerced to be like, he or she did this one time and it made me think like, oh, maybe they're gay. Like, what?
Exactly what I'm thinking. They had surveillance set out on like the suspected and each government employee was being watched. The government found this to be too consuming and a little bit costly.
Well, who the fuck do they have working as the government spies?
Right. How can you trust the surveillance team?
I mean, how did you vet them?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Who let them go through?
Who let them be okay?
Because of this, they needed a quicker method to complete their goal of ridding all gays from their officials.
Great.
At some point in the early 1960s, the Canadian government paid $5,000, which is the equivalent to $40,000 today, to send a man named Dr. Frank Robert Wake to the United States to study homosexual detection devices that were used in the U.S. at the time. Okay, U.S. Okay, U.S.
Like, what the fuck?
U.S. You're telling me the United States is probably like, hey guys, we have a...
What are you
like, they're hosting like TED Talks.
Really, though? How are they marketing the fact that they have this...
Exactly.
Like, LGBTQ plus radar of theirs that they've created?
Dr. Wake was a psychology professor as well as the chair of the psychology department at Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. He studied in the United States for a little over a year, and this is when he picked up on a method where pictures were being shown to subjects and pupil dilations were being studied to determine what images that they were most interested in. So Dr. Wake is like, this is it. This is the one.
This is the one.
This is...
Oh, we figured it out.
Thank you for the 40 grand. I have the idea. So he brought this testing method back up north to Canada. This is where he created and delivered to the Canadian government what they called, quote, the special project at the time, but was later coined the fruit machine.
Oh my God.
So what was the fruit machine? Please and how did it work or not work? Suspected homosexuals would be called in and then they would be shown pornographic images while their physiological effects to each image was studied. Okay. But the main idea was that if their pupils dilated at the sight of a naked man, that would indicate attraction for the same sex. I'm sorry, let me pause here, because if someone was flipping me through something and it's just like naked woman, I'd be like, whoa, like what?
It doesn't matter if I'm not physically sexually attracted to other women.
I'm gonna be like,
my eyes, bro, my pupils are going to dilate. Like one day, Morgan and I were going through pictures in our text messages, and we were recording something. I was trying to show her pictures from something, and I swiped over, and it was Ollie's where he got his balls cut off. And I was convinced it was a vagina.
And your pupils dilated.
And my pupils for sure. And it was a dog. So what are you going to call me? What are you going to do with me?
Bestiality?
Yeah, what the fuck? They for sure dilated.
Oh my God, it was so fucked up. Anyway, the fruit machine was this contraption, and it had a chair, like a chair that you would see in like a dental office, mm-hmm. right? And then it had a pulley with a camera that was going like towards the pupils. Mm-hmm. And then there was a black box located in front of it that would display the pictures.
Okay.
So like the cameras were kind of like right here. And then the TV screen, I guess you would call it, is right directly in front of you.
Okay.
I'm saying right here, like you guys can see me.
Oh, if you haven't picked this up yet, we had to take a break from YouTube because
you should tell them.
Yeah, sorry guys, we totally forgot. Taylar almost had a mental breakdown again, and that's not even like a joke. I'm not playing on like mental breakdowns like as a joke. No, like legit, it was bad. So,
it happened.
And yes, I am referring to myself in the third person when I talk about myself in that position. So yeah, we're taking a step back, but audio will be on there. All right, continue, Morgan.
Okay. These pictures would range from like very mundane to like sexually explicit. Oh my God. And these were like definitely like stereotypical perceptions of what the government officials would think that these gay men would be aroused by.
Okay.
They were pictures of like half naked or fully nude, like big muscular guys with 8-pack, just like chilling.
Here's another thing. If I see a sexy woman, she's a sexy woman. I'm going to be attracted to her in a different way.
Period.
Like maybe not like want to get with her, but like I'm attracted.
Like that's like envy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's even more than envy. I'm like, you are a hot, sexy beast.
Like Brianna Chicken Fry, your boobs look fucking great.
Your boobs look amazing. Like I would love to see them.
I would love to touch them.
I would really doesn't mean I love you. Look at them.
Oh, I do love you.
If you had consent, we would love to. But
yeah. Which I can't believe they just like could assume like, oh, whatever. I mean, the 40s, so it makes sense.
Well, it's the 40s, and it's just like, what science backs this up?
Right.
What
have you researched?
What have you researched?
Besides maybe your own science.
Because I would love to compare that to watching pornographic videos in general.
Yeah.
How people's eyes react.
True.
Right.
Should we start a study?
Yeah, starting a study.
The fruit machine consisted of a series of questions, and then the images would flash, like very bright. The subjects were walked in, they were seated in their chair, they looked at their images while a plethora of scientists surrounded them. And they would note their pupil response, their pulse, their skin reflexes, and their respiration rate. The subjects were also told that the machine was measuring their stress and that this was routine. Y'all,
if someone's telling me something's measuring my stress, I'm stressed.
I'm immediately stressed. And then I'm laying there, right? Uh-huh. And they're like, we're just checking your stress.
And then it's like,
chair. Naked man, naked man, naked man.
Naked man.
I'll be like, I'm really stressed out, actually.
I'm attracted to men, and I get stressed out when I see a naked man.
I'm really stressed, okay?
I get really uncomfortable if I see a naked man.
And the subjects were not allowed to question this process. It was all like confidential, like you can't speak about what happens in this room.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they weren't even allowed to be like, hey, what's going on? Like it was like, you're here to get a stress level test, sit down please.
Oh my God, how do you even expose people to that without their consent?
So messed up.
Well, again, it was the 40s, consent didn't exist.
But the scientists and doctors, their main goal here was to raise minimal to zero questions while monitoring as many variables as they could so that they could determine an emotional and physical response. While Dr. Wake was right about pupils dilating to indicate interest in arousal, I guess that's actually scientifically proved now. Yeah. He forgot to take into account every other variable of error here, like the effect of light on your eyes. When an image of a brighter screen, a brighter contrast changes into a darker one, pupils are going to show that same reaction. They're going to dilate and they're going to get bigger and shrink and bigger and shrink.
Exactly. And how many naked photos of people are full bright? They're not.
Right. Exactly. They're very dim. Especially if someone's sending me a nude. If my boyfriend doesn't send me nudes.
If someone's sending me a nude.
You know what? Never mind. But if you're hide your phone from the next Snapchat from Aaron, I immediately know it's a picture of your tits.
Yeah, obviously.
Immediately.
Or I'm like,
and I'm
hey,
brightness down.
Let me send you a picture of this ingrown hair. Hey, make sure you're not around someone.
Yeah. Hide the next picture. That's what I get. Yeah, and the brightness goes down. So anyway, this difference in contrast, this brighter and darker contrast, it's going to lead to wrong results or invalid results. The scientists tried to fix the situation, but they couldn't. And the camera's position brought a lot of problems of error. The cameras had to be put on the side. So think headphones, but a little bit in forward. Because if it was in front of them, then the screen would have been blocked.
They can't see it. Which
made it even harder to read pupil dilation because it's from the sides of your eyes, which is leaving so much more room for error. And they didn't take into account that there's more types or different types of sexuality.
Yeah, it's not like you're gay or you're straight. There's a million little things in between.
Exactly. Yeah. And this caused even more issues. Eventually, this special project, the Fruit Machine, fell apart in 1967.
Good.
This is when the gay witch hunt or this panic calmed down just a little, and the government decided that this was no longer worth it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, over its time, the consequences of the Fruit Machine left more than 9,000 people jobless.
Oh my God.
And all 9,000 people were documented and considered by the RCMP, the police, to be enemies of the state. This majority was indigenous people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a witch hunt for both.
I honestly, even more so than just anything, I think that, well, not more so than also tracking out LGBTQ plus members, because it was considered illegal at the time, right? It was considered illegal at the time. More so than that, I also think that this was a double-sided situation for them to once again suppress and be actively fucking terrible to indigenous people. I agree. I'm sure they didn't trust indigenous people as much as indigenous people in communities did not trust them.
For good reason.
For great reason. For the same reason that Native Americans in the United States do not trust our government and political anything.
Because we wreck their homes,
We've
their lives.
Constantly, for years, wrecked their homes, their earth, and made it to just where they can't even practice comfortably their own beliefs and culture.
Yeah. So fucked up.
So bad.
Even though the Fruit Machine was taken apart, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Force continued their witch hunt. They continued on with invasive tests on Canadian men and women until 1990. The Fruit Machine was not something that you would learn in your Canadian history books, and it wasn't really brought back to light until June 1st, 2016 by a documentary filmmaker named Sarah Foti. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Because of this documentary, the Fruit Machine made its way back to haunt Canadian government.
Thank God.
When they were slapped with a class action lawsuit in November of 2016.
Hell yeah.
Let's go. I got chills.
Yeah, me too.
Leading this lawsuit was a man named Todd Ross. Todd was a 19-year-old recruit for the Navy when a special military unit opened an investigation into him. Here, he was interrogated, strapped to a polygraph, and forced to admit that he was gay. He was bullied into admission before he decided to come out. He was given honorable discharge and then was expelled from the Navy.
Really?
Afterwards, he reported that he was depressed and suicidal.
Yeah.
On November 28th, 2017, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gave a formal apology to the LGBTQ plus Canadians for the persecution and injustices that they have suffered and to advance together on the path to equality and inclusion. He says, quote, "You are professionals, you are patriots, and above all, you are innocent. And for all your suffering, you deserve justice and you deserve peace. It is our collective shame that you were so mistreated. And it is our collective shame that this apology took so long. Many who suffered are no longer alive to hear these words. And for that, we are truly sorry. And this apology came with a $145 million. $110 million going towards the class action compensation for those LGBTQ plus civil servants whose careers were sidelined or ended because of their sexuality. And then the remaining $15 million were for historical reconciliation, education, and memorialization efforts. United States, babe, it's your turn.
Wow. I hated it, but I loved...
In the end...
I loved that it was kind of made right.
Yeah.
But how do you make that
something
right?
like that right?
How do you... I mean, honestly, if someone's a good worker for you, if someone is great at their job, what does their sexuality have to do with whether or not they can stay?
Right. Well, they believed that they were spies.
Spies? Like what?
What? Exactly.
And how would the Soviet Union be able to blackmail them?
How does the Soviet Union know?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, be able to blackmail them with their sexuality. How the fuck would the Soviet Union know?
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds so stupid. Just because 3 of the 5 Cambridge 5 were, 1 was bisexual, 2 were gay, I think that's what you said?
Yeah.
Now everybody is?
Right.
So stupid.
Yeah. But in the end, I feel like what you can do in that situation is give a formal apology.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more that you can do, but
you can give
getting that out of your prime minister is amazing. And that's growth. That's what that is. And the United States has not stepped up to that yet. And that's a fucking shame.
Yeah, it really is. It's such a shame.
Anyway,
and
guys,
that's why we are fighting with you.
Yeah.
Because really, though, what does it matter to you? Like, if anybody on here is listening, I'm sure somewhere along the way we've picked up one like weirdo that obviously is not in line with where
our
we
views.
preach and what we view, how we view life. I'm sure we've got one homophobe on here that's listening to this.
Sure.
Like, I'm turning this shit off. I can't.
I'm leaving a review.
I'm leaving a shitty review. I'm leaving a 1 star.
You'll be on Shots Fired. And you'll be absolutely
you will be on
torn
Shots
apart.
Actually, you're not going to be on Shots Fired. You're going to be publicly
Shot
fired. Shots fired at you publicly, not physically. I mean, really though, what's your issue?
Yeah. I don't get it.
It makes no sense.
I don't get it. Anyway, Taylar, that's all I got. What do you have for us today?
Today, I'm going to be telling you guys about the case of Mollie Olgin and Kristene Chapa. And just before we get into this is a really upsetting case.
From Audio Boom Studios and Woodcut Media, What Makes a Killer returns for Season 4. I'm Jennifer Natoso, and I'll be your host as we examine 13 new killers. This season, we'll take a look at infamous killers including Diane Downs, Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, Ted Bundy, and Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer. Follow us on Spotify or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you find your favorite shows.
In my opinion, it's a hate crime, and there's no way that you can tell me differently, which you will be convinced of by the end of this, I'm pretty sure.
From what I've heard, absolute hate crime.
And next, trigger warning for SA, the R word, depression, a lot of gore. Okay, we're just going to get into it now.
Let's do it.
In the early morning hours of June 23rd, 2012, 2 birdwatchers, married couple Chris and Stan Seymour, were on the viewing deck at Violet Andrews Park in Portland, Texas, just 130 miles away from San Antonio, right on the Gulf. This location is filled with beautiful green grass, palm trees, beaches, dunes, playgrounds, and with that comes a lot of high grass because it's right on the water. The perfect place for families, picnics, a coastal walk, and birdwatchers. As Chris was looking through the lens of her camera, she spots something out of the corner of her eye, and she can't really make out what she's looking at. It might be a large pile of litter that washed in, an animal, but her gut knew it was something more than that. So she called her husband over, Stan, to have a look, and he takes the camera from her, zooms in, only to realize that what he was looking at were 2 teenage girls, covered in blood and lying motionless in the tall grass.
Oh my gosh.
Stan grabbed his phone and called 911. When the police arrived at the scene, it was gruesome. According to Dateline NBC, the girls had both been shot in the head, execution style. Before their deaths, they had been stripped of their clothes, tied up, blindfolded, and gagged using duct tape. Despite this, the way they were positioned was absolutely heartbreaking. One of the girls, who we are going to refer to as Jane Doe for now, was lying halfway on top of the other, who we will call Joan Doe. With Jane's arm draped across Joan's chest and head, it was obvious that she was trying to protect her. Joan Doe was cold to the touch, with no pulse and no sign of life, and pronounced dead at the scene.
No.
As first responders are moving Jane Doe to her back in order to assess her, she sits up and begins moaning.
Oh my gosh.
She was alive. Paramedics quickly rushed the two girls to the hospital and placed Jane Doe in critical condition with life-saving measures. But she was still alive. Investigators at the scene searched for any piece of evidence that they could find when they discovered a driver's license belonging to an 18-year-old girl named Mary Kristene Chapa. But because of the condition of both of the girls and their wounds, which made their faces unrecognizable, officers were unable to identify which Mary was. As doctors are working on Jane Doe and police are analyzing the scene, the media begins reporting on the discovery of the two girls, when the Portland Police Department receives a call from a woman named Grace. She was reporting her 18-year-old daughter, Mary Kristene Chapa, missing.
No.
Grace was instructed to meet officers at the hospital, but not given anything more than that. Grace's husband was out of town, but luckily she had a friend with her who was able to drive her and her oldest daughter to the hospital. When Grace arrived, doctors and officers informed her about the two girls that were found and the situation. And one, Joan Doe, was deceased, but the other, Jane Doe, was now in a coma. In order to know which was her daughter, they needed Grace to identify the girls.
Oh my gosh.
Grace broke down. She was absolutely inconsolable. This is like her worst fear. Any mother's worst fear coming true. So her older daughter said, "I'm going to do it," and took the task of identifying the survivor, who we have been referring to as Jane Doe. Moments passed as Grace waits for her oldest daughter to return, but it feels like years when she finally sees her daughter walking towards her with officers and doctors. All her daughter could manage to say was, "Mom, it's her. Kristine is alive." But everyone knew who Kristine was with that night. It was no question. The true identity of Joan Doe, who Kristine was protecting by lying over her body in the tall grass at the park that night. To her family was Kristine's best friend. But to friends who knew the truth, it was Kristine's girlfriend, 19-year-old Mollie Olgin. Mollie and Kristine were two teenagers living in Portland, Texas. The two had met in high school and started dating 5 months before their attack. Online and at school, the couple were relatively open about their relationship. Mollie had graduated and moved on to her first year of college studying psychology, and Kristine was a senior and well known for her amazing abilities as a softball player.
Yes, girl.
But who would want to do this to these two young teenagers in love and just at the beginning of their life? That was the real question. Detective Chavez and his team continued their intense search of the crime scene, not leaving a single piece of evidence behind. And this is what they found. 2 .45 caliber casings where the bodies were discovered, an empty Monster drink can, and 5 cigarette butts on the overlook that was only 30 feet away from where Mollie and Kristine were found. And all of the duct tape that was found on and around the girls' bodies were sent off for DNA testing. It was obvious that the girls had been attacked the night before, on June 22nd. Friends confirmed that Violet Andrews Park was where the couple had been that night, and they had gone on an evening walk. And they would talk about their long weeks and friends that, that they had gone there before. And this was like, they would go on walks all the time is basically what I'm trying to say. And using Mollie's autopsy report, police discovered that, trigger warning, the girls had both been sexually assaulted, raped, tortured, and killed 8 hours before their discovery.
I'm so sick.
Meaning that Kristine had laid in the grass holding on to Mollie
8 hours.
For 8 hours.
Oh my gosh, what a fighter. What a survivor. What a fucking queen.
I mean, she'd been shot in the head.
No.
She's sitting there in the cold. It's dark. They're by the water. You know that breeze is chilly. No matter if it's June, no matter if it's Texas, no matter if it's the Bahamas, it's chilly at night.
Yeah.
It would be a miracle if Kristine were to survive her first night. And she did. And then the second. And on the third day, the true miracle happened. On June 26th, Kristine regained consciousness. The left side of her body was completely paralyzed. She couldn't speak, but she remembered everything.
Oh my God.
She was in pain, but she used every bit of fight left in her to communicate exactly what had happened that night with police. Kristine, with her eyes closed, her mother holding on to her, connected to wires, laying in her hospital bed and fighting, grabbed a pen and wrote everything she could remember on a notepad for investigators. Do you know the person that did this? No, Kristine wrote, but she continued writing. Male, skinny build, 5'8" to 5'9", 140 pounds, in his 20s, brown hair with facial hair, black gloves with a white Under Armour logo. She remembered the brand. Her attacker called Mollie and Kristine number 1 and number 2. But she remembered another thing. He smelled like cigarettes, the butts that they found on the overlook nearby. Detectives immediately called the lab and fast-tracked the DNA testing on these. But Kristine wasn't done. She continued fighting, communicating, and recovering. She fought through speech, mental, and physical therapy. She would not quit. She fought for herself, her family, for Mollie, her community, and justice. Kristine was able to create a composite sketch with police with all of her details about his description. And Morgan, I'm going to show it to you now.
Damn. That shit is detailed.
It's so detailed. Like his eyes kind of sunken in, the shape of his eyebrows.
His cheekbones.
Where his forehead wrinkles are. Mm-hmm. His like hairline, the ear shape, the nose.
His lips.
The little goatee, like accented part.
Yeah.
Very, very detailed.
Very.
And she was able to tell her story, finally. I obtained Kristine's full recollection of the night of the attack from Dateline NBC's episode on this case, which is on season 27, episode 36, and it's called The Overlook. On the night of June 22nd, 2012, Mollie and Kristine had planned to go to a movie together, but they were running late and decided to skip it. They were driving around just trying to figure out what they wanted to do, making plans as they went, when Mollie suggested that they go to Violet Andrews Park because she wanted to show Kristine where she had been baptized there.
Aww.
Right beside the Overlook, which is where she was baptized. So they went over there and were looking. The two were just hanging out there, standing, leaning against the railings, only in the park for about 5 minutes when they noticed a man walking near them. It was dark out, and the way he was lingering made the two feel extremely uncomfortable, so they decided to get the fuck out of there. They turned to walk out, and they see this man come up beside Mollie and put a gun into her side.
Oh my gosh.
He forced Mollie and Kristine to walk down a steep embankment and into the tall grass. Mollie was referred to as girl number 1 and Kristine was girl number 2.
Like, who is he, fucking Dr. Seuss? Like, what is he doing?
So fucking awful.
He just dehumanized them.
Yeah, he had to separate the fact that they were humans in order to do this.
It's fucked up.
Kristine asked the man if he was going to take them somewhere, and he said, "No, this is going to be quick and easy."
I'm sick.
So trigger warning for all the original trigger warnings. We're going to go into this now. The gunman proceeded to rape Mollie and Kristine at gunpoint before forcing Kristine to put duct tape on Mollie's mouth and eyes before doing the same to herself. He had then bound both of the girls before Kristine heard a gunshot. And after that, everything went dark around her. Kristine said all she could remember was thinking about her family. As she laid there, it was so cold. She was scared, but she kept fighting to stay alive. In an interview with NBC's Dateline, Detective Chavez said Kristine's power and fight inspired all of us. Basically, he's saying, if she could fight like hell, we could too. And they did just that. Finally, the DNA testing from the evidence collected at the scene came back. The Monster Energy drink and the cigarette butts came back matching each other. And matching someone within the database.
Yes.
Dylan Spellman. Spellman lived just 2 blocks away from the crime scene and was living there with family friends while working at their plumbing business. But that's not the most interesting part about Spellman. He had a criminal history and was actually awaiting sentencing for an armed robbery of a family in Nevada.
Holy shit.
Literally went into someone's house, tied up a woman, her husband, their 2 kids, and robbed them.
Holy shit.
And he looked very similar to Kristine's sketch that she provided. Here
oh my gosh, that is him.
He looks just like him. Look at the eyebrows, the eyes, how they're set, the hairline,
cheekbones,
the ears, everything about him. By the way, guys, all of these images are going to be posted on the episode announcement post that we make. And don't forget, this is episode 89. So in the Nevada armed robbery, Spellman's victims were also bound with duct tape and referred to as numbers. But Spellman was adamant that he had no involvement with this crime. He did tell investigators that he was at the park at 11 p.m. that night, which she was able to confirm. Even though Spellman looked like the sketch and the MOs from his original robbery and this crime are extremely similar, Spellman was put into a photo lineup and given to Kristine, but she could not identify him. And Spellman was 6'8". Kristine was adamant that her attacker was barely taller than her. This was devastating. Detective Chavez seemed to be at a dead end at this point because they could not connect this crime to him. It's not a crime to be smoking a cigarette in a park, you know? This case was too close to him now, and in hopes of getting this case closed, bringing Mollie and Kristine justice, the Portland Police Department chief actually decided that they needed fresh eyes on the case, starting over with a clean slate and handing the case over to Detective Aaron Vollman. At this point, 2 years had passed, and it's now 2014, and the case is pretty much stagnant. Just days later, after Detective Vollman was given the case, he received a call from detectives in a neighboring town, which is Sinton. Kristene Chapa's father had received a letter that was addressed, quote, "For the eyes of Mr. Chapa only. Important details inside." This letter was typed by a hitman who was hired by the man who attacked Mollie and Kristine. This unknown gunman had contacted this hitman who wrote this letter to finish the job and make the, quote, "only witness disappear," aka kill Kristine.
What the fuck?
The gunman detailed parts of the attack that had never been released to the public, like how the girls were forced to duct tape each other and calling them by numbers. Neither of this was common knowledge. The writer gives the name of the man who hired him, telling the reader that I'm going to let you handle him. The attacker's name, according to this hitman, was Kristine Melcher, a man living in Utah. Detectives immediately got into contact with Melcher, but he had a rock-solid alibi. He was in fucking military training at the time of the attacks, confirmed by his higher-ups, paperwork, and plenty of proof that he was there. He was with the military. So who did this? Who would want to frame Kristine Melcher from many states away? This just makes no sense. But Melcher knew exactly who had done this to him. His ex-friend, David Strickland. In fact, he was positive that this was the doing of David Strickland, as the photo attached in the letter that was written by this quote-unquote hitman was actually taken by Strickland's wife, Laura, on a night out with Melcher.
Shut up.
And investigators recognized his name. In fact, they had interviewed him just days after the murder of Mollie and attempted murder of Kristine. But what's interesting is that police didn't go to him for an interview. David Strickland came to them.
Did he? Mm-hmm. Okay, David.
Days after the attack, Strickland came into the Portland Police Department as a good Samaritan. He just wanted to report some suspicious activity with a white car outside of his parents' house in Portland, Texas, which was nearby. I'm talking like less than a mile away from the crime scene. But where is David Strickland now? Soon after the shootings, he had moved to Utah, where he met Kristine Melcher. The two became best friends and I think even lived together for a little bit. but it quickly turned south when Melcher had Strickland arrested for stealing parts of his gun collection.
He knew he was a killer.
Detective Vollman immediately requested that the case files collected on Strickland in the gun robbery investigation in Utah be sent to him. At the time of David Strickland's arrest in Utah, all of his belongings were seized and used as evidence, well, taken in as evidence and photographed. And this is what they had. Number 1, a gun suppressor, condoms, handcuffs, bolt cutters, a knife, a Glock 45 caliber pistol, ammo, black Under Armour gloves that had a white Under Armour logo. Local Utah law enforcement still had Strickland's belongings as evidence and were able to hand all of this over to Detective Vollman with Portland PD, meaning they could test the gun. And Morgan, here is a photo of Strickland.
Oh, similar. Mm-hmm. The other guy looks more like the sketch to me, but
he's 6'8". So it's like she would know if someone was 6'8".
Yeah, I mean,
look at the nose, look at his mouth, look at the ears, and I think if his hair was shorter, it would be a better match.
Yeah, I agree. Damn.
Mm-hmm. On June 20th, 2014, the ballistics report confirmed that Glock 45 caliber pistol was a match. And hours later, police arrested David Strickland and his wife, Laura. Using cell phone records, police were able to confirm that David's cell phone was near Mr. Chapa's home when the letter was hand-delivered to his mailbox. David Strickland was charged with capital murder, aggravated sexual assault, and aggravated assault and held at the San Patricio, I believe, County Jail. His wife, Laura, was charged with tampering with evidence, but these were later dropped as they could not confirm that she was involved in this. But as investigators continued their search, they found even more damning evidence. On his computer were portions of the letter typed out that was hand-delivered to Kristine's home.
Idiot.
And you know how they found it? This is so interesting. It's not because he saved it in his computer. It's because if you use spell check or grammar checks or anything like that on your computer, it saves large portions that you correct and it logs that into your computer data.
Oh my God.
I had no idea about that. That was so interesting.
I'm fucked.
Yeah, like we're doing anything criminally. We didn't say that. Like, ma'am, you typed it right here and you spelled it all wrong. I'm like, yeah, I did.
And then you probably pronounced it wrong on your podcast.
I probably did. David Strickland's trial began in 2016, and on the stand testifying against him, Kristene Chapa. She stared into David Strickland's soul as she told the jury in courtroom what he had done to her and Mollie. And the fucking coward could not even look at her. But there was an issue. When Kristine was given the original photo lineup with David Strickland, she could not identify him. She could no longer put a face to her attacker. And his defense team ate this up, which I'm like, obviously it's trauma.
Right, exactly.
It's a trauma response.
She was in a coma.
She was in a straight up, she was shot in the head, in a coma, is paralyzed on the left side of her body, has
Is it not guilt enough that the man can't even look at her?
But the gloves, it's like the gloves, the gun, it's a match.
Yeah.
And he's implemented himself in this case not once now, but twice.
Yeah, guilty.
So his defense team ate this shit up. Strickland's team presented the jury that Dylan Spellman was a better match for the gunman. His DNA was at the scene. He had a criminal past. This was his MO. David Strickland just had sticky hands, not bloody ones. After 5 days of testimonies, the jury only took 6 hours to deliberate, giving him a verdict of guilty.
Good.
Guilty
Thank
of capital
God.
murder and aggravated sexual assault, not a hate crime.
Are you fucking kidding me?
They believe that they could not charge him with a hate crime as this was not he didn't target them because they were lesbians. He targeted them at random. But one of the first things he said to Kristine in many articles that I read, not on the Dateline NBC episode, but on many articles, was that he was trying to get them to have sex with him and in front of him.
Like with each other, like the girls.
Mm-hmm.
What a fucking sicko.
Yeah. On September 28th, 2016, David Strickland was sentenced to life in prison with no death penalty but no chance at parole. People celebrated, finally, justice for Mollie and Kristine. But this was far from over, because not everyone was convinced that this was the doing of David Strickland. Other than the gloves, the letter, and the gun, and implementing yourself into the crime twice, investigators had no DNA evidence that connected Strickland to the crime scene. In 2018, news broke that Strickland and his team were fighting back and making actual progress. After Cynthia Orr, Strickland's attorney of it's like a certain term of an attorney, and I can't think of it, and I don't know why I didn't write it down, came across DNA evidence that did not match David Strickland. But it wasn't the butts, it wasn't the energy drink. On Kristine's body, investigators found a foreign male pubic hair, which was thought to be belonging to the attacker. Because both the prosecution and the defense were comfortable with the evidence that they had pre-trial, this hair was never tested. Cynthia Orr disagreed and filed an appeal, and it was granted. DNA testing was done. The pubic hair came back as a match, not to David Strickland, but to Dylan Spellman.
Holy shit, I did not think this is where we were going.
The cigarette and energy drink guy. But how do we explain the extreme height difference? Well, illusion, as Cynthia Orr says. The area that Mollie and Kristine were in when they were being led down that steep drop-off, it's hills and dips and sand and dunes and tall grass, short grass. So he could have seemed to be way taller or way shorter at the moment because of where they were. And maybe Kristine just saw it wrong. But that feels a little fucking victim blamey to me.
Absolutely.
And we're not going to go there, Cynthia Orr.
Yeah, Cynthia.
Cynthia, don't be that girl. Don't
Cynthia,
be that girl.
You are a female. Remember that, honey.
Right. And Kristine felt the same way. She was like, you're fucking rude for doing that. And she knew that Dylan Spellman did not do this. She would have remembered. She stood level beside her attacker on the concrete before she was led down the embankment. And she had watched him walk around. You would fucking notice if someone was 6'8" like Dylan Spellman.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember people that I see walking around here that look like they're 6'8".
Yeah.
I worked in
Tall
football for
motherfuckers.
years. I saw people that were well above 6'2" often.
It's your first thought. You see a tall person,
Jesus
you're
Christ,
like, damn.
you're tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's not going to forget that he's, I mean, if I would be like, okay, if he was the attacker, he was so fucking tall.
Yeah.
He was super, super tall. Not he was 5'7", 5'8", 5'9".
Yeah.
There's a major height discrepancy there.
Absolutely.
A motion was filed by David Strickland's attorney for his conviction to be overturned because of this new evidence. It was denied, thankfully, in January of 2020 because there is no actual evidence that can confirm that this hair found belonging to Spellman was actually pubic hair. If not, it could have been beard hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. They never tested to see if it was pubic or facial hair. And they look very similar.
Oh my God.
Right. And Spellman had a beard at the time.
Right.
So it could have easily been that. And not to mention, I mean, okay, and here's another thing. Like, Dylan Spellman, how the fuck, dude, did you get your shit all over this case?
Yeah, what were you doing?
What were y'all doing? Were you trimming your beard? Were you shaving your pubes while you're smoking and drinking an energy monster at 11 p.m. at night with your girlfriend?
And you look just like the sketch.
Yeah, like, I think there might be and the MO, I think there might be something to that. Like, maybe he's a fucked up individual and went to the crime scene after the fact.
That's what I'm thinking.
I think that's more plausible than the whole David Strickland didn't do it, because I think David Strickland is guilty.
I agree, and I think it's a fucking hate crime, period.
Yeah, and not to mention the new, like, this is not new evidence. We've always been knowing that this hair was here.
Yeah.
Both the defense and the prosecution just chose not to test it because you both had enough evidence, you felt. So you can't come back after the fact. Well, you can legally, but you can't come back after the fact. No, we want to test that.
Yeah, we want to test
it now.
It's not a match.
It's not a match. But for now, David Strickland is still behind bars.
Good.
And Kristene Chapa filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Strickland, which goes on trial this year, August 22nd. Kristine's motto in life is, quote, "I take bullets."
Hell yes, queen.
I love that.
I love that.
I take bullets. Fuck yeah, you do.
Fuck yeah.
And come out on top.
And survive.
How many people can do that?
Right.
I don't think I could. I really don't think I could. She also co-wrote the book Salt, Wind, Redemption, Love and Murder in South Texas with author Chiva Sandage, I believe is how you pronounce it, discussing life before and after the shooting. And she gets to, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to slam my hand down on the table. She really talks about her and Mollie's relationship and the love that they shared and their romance before getting into this. So you get to see a little bit more into who they are before all of this. Kristine went on to college. She's dating, she's walking, she's talking, and she's still fighting. Kristine is an advocate and speaks out about her life, her love, her story, and Mollie.
Oh my God.
I know. And that is the case of Mollie Olgin and Kristene Chapa.
We stan Kristine and Mollie.
Yeah. Literally. But really, why is this not being considered as a hate crime? I think police did a great job investigating this, fighting, being an advocate, being a champion for Kristine and Mollie.
Absolutely.
And wanting this case done. Because really, what are you going to do when someone literally takes a bullet to the skull and comes out like, okay, I'm ready. Here's everything I have. You move half of my body. I can't speak. I can't see. But here, let me write down everything I know about this for you and hand it over. Yeah. You're just going to stand there and not do anything? Of course not.
Do you think that if this was, like, I don't want to think about it like this, but if it was a different outcome, would police be so inclined to solve the case?
I don't know. I would like to say because it's two girls, they would look into this out of fear that this would be like a serial person,
right?
A serial attacker. Because that does not seem like a first crime to me,
also,
you know?
Sorry, I'm just kind of rummaging.
Rambling.
Ramaging?
Rambling.
Rambling here. But like, David, he was in the clear. And that motherfucker's like, I'm going to send a note.
You don't insert yourself into crimes that you did not commit. Twice.
Not once.
It's different than coming in and giving a tip or calling. But you don't go. If I knew something about a murder, I'm literally a true crime podcaster. I know my alibi's on lockdown. I'm not going to walk into the Knoxville Police Department and be like, hey, I have a tip for you. I'm calling, I'm emailing. They have a tip line set up. This is 2012. It's not like it's 1950. Like, they have tip lines, call lines that you can call. I'm not going to walk my ass in there.
And then I'm not going to send a letter and then 4 years later be like, test the hair. I'm not guilty.
Yeah, like you've implicated yourself not once, but twice. Your Under Armour glove that Kristine just happened to remember because she was a softball player.
Yeah.
That's the only reason she said she even thought to look at it.
Holy shit. She's a fucking
badass. Badass.
Period.
I mean,
why haven't I ever heard about this story?
I've only ever heard about it one time. And it was on Crime Junkie podcast a few years ago.
Well, I'm pissed because I feel like this is a case, like, especially for younger girls, that they need to hear. Like, and her note taking, like, that is so important. And
yes. I mean, it's so important to, even if you think like, I'm not going to survive this.
Just one thing that
just
can help
if you just look, and if it's happening and if it's going on, you can't get out. The best way to protect yourself is to remember everything, to take mental notes. This is what this was. This is what he looked like. This is that. Da 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 da. Look at what shirt, what pants he had on. You focus on those things, and even if it's dark, any glimpse of light that you can get, look into it, and then the second you can communicate in any way, shape, or form, you write that shit down. You tell somebody. You scream it to the gods. You let it be known.
Oh my God.
That's another thing is I wish everybody in the United States, in the world, knew ASL.
Yeah.
Because if everybody in the world knew ASL, if anybody was in a situation like this, because I think if I was Kristine, I wouldn't even think about writing. I would just start signing. I would immediately start signing. I'd be like, give me an interpreter right now. I'm not good at it. I used to be good at it. I'm kind of rough now.
But you can make do.
But that's what I would use.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've said absolutely 40,000 times, but I just agree with everything you're saying. Okay?
I know. This case is so fucked, but to see Kristine's strength and determination and just
and
like
what she's doing for the world now.
Oh my God.
She's
been on The View. She's like going, and she talks about this openly.
She's so strong.
She's so strong.
Because that is so traumatic.
Mollie's family and friends I was just heartbroken listening to stories about her and her life. And like, she was a freshman in college. She wanted to be a psychologist. She was so excited about it. Like her life was beginning. Yeah. And she had roommates that loved her and loved Kristine and her relationship. And Mollie was just like the most outgoing and kind and fun and down for whatever type of girl.
Yeah.
And I just feel so heartbroken. Could you imagine losing Aaron?
No.
In something like that where you're holding on. I mean, I could fucking sob all night, like holding on to them. And you're alive.
Night, 8 hours. It's such a sad story, but
it's such a sad story. I don't know how you did it, Kristine. I doubt you'll ever listen to this.
We love you.
And I'm your biggest fucking fan.
You are
I've watched
badass.
Every interview that you've done today. I went through it before because I did this research like 2 weeks ago. I went through back today and just watched every single one of these interviews again. And I'm just astonished every time to hear her talking about this.
Yeah.
And being an advocate.
Amazing.
I mean, it's insane. It's insane. Oh. Well, guys, rough episode,
but important to talk about. Happy Pride.
To talk about. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
Love you.
And let us know if you guys have any case recommendations for either of us for the rest of this month.
Bye.
Sending love. Bye.